Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the National Archives. I'm Ray Mosley, Director of the Federal Register. Today's program is the second in a series of lectures commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Federal Register Act, which became law on July 26, 1935. We're delighted to have such a good turnout today. Last month, we took a look back at the events and forces that led up to Congress addressing the state of executive branch lawmaking with the passage of the Federal Register Act. That system, with the enhancements of the Administrative Procedure Act and other laws, has continued in operation very effectively for 75 years, a remarkable statement about the quality and adaptability of the law. And if you'll permit me an aside, a humorous aside, I hope, it may also suggest that shorter laws, the Federal Register Act was only 4 pages, may be a path to greater flexibility and effectiveness. And this is no judgment about the current state of lawmaking, but by comparison, the health care law is 847 pages. In today's presentation, we are looking forward at trends in federal rulemaking and administrative law. I have to say, at times, we at the Office of the Federal Register are so caught up in the process of daily publishing that we lose sight of the broader landscape. So I'm personally excited today to have this opportunity to raise my head above the daily grind and focus on the larger landscape. Our speaker is an authority on federal rulemaking and administrative law, the chairman of the Administrative Conference, the Honorable Paul Verkuil. Paul Verkuil is the 10th chairman of the Administrative Conference of the United States, sworn into office by the Vice President on April 6th of this year. Mr. Verkuil is a well-known administrative law teacher and scholar who has co-authored a leading treatise, Administrative Law and Process, now in its 5th edition, and several other books, including his most recent, Outsourcing Sovereignty, and over 60 articles on the general topic of public law and regulation. He is President Emeritus of the College of William & Mary, has been Dean of the Tulane and Cardozo Law Schools, and a faculty member at the University of North Carolina. He is a graduate of William & Mary and the University of Virginia Law School. Among his career highlights is serving as a special master in New Jersey versus New York, an original jurisdiction case before the Supreme Court, which determined the sovereignty of Ellis Island, amongst other things. As you know, the Administrative Conference of the United States was revived by Congress last year after a 15-year hiatus. President Obama named the 10-member council on July 8th of this year, saying at the time that the Administrative Conference is a public-private partnership designed to make government work better. The 50 government and 40 public members are in the process of being named. So among the trends we hope the chairman will discuss today are his plans for the conference. It is a pleasure to introduce Chairman Verkuil to you and welcome him to the National Archives.
Thank you very much, Ray. It's an honor to be here to celebrate the enactment of the Federal Register Act 75 years ago. I plan this afternoon both to describe the work of the Administrative Conference as it begins its new life and to outline the role that ACUS will play in helping agencies use technology to make the rulemaking process more fair, more efficient, and more open to public participation. Let's start with our seal, which we revised. We used to have, the old conference had an eye looking at you like it would be on the dollar bill. And so we replaced that. We thought that might, in this era of national security, be a little concerning. So we replaced it with a torch, which indicates light, and we're trying to add light to the world. The Federal Register was the seminal event in the emergence of the modern administrative state. enacted in the blitz of New Deal regulations and spurred on by government's accidental revocation of the unpublished order in the Panama refining case, the act was a recognition, really an admonishment to the Roosevelt administration that there can be no private law or regulations in a democratic society. In the committee report to the Federal Register Act, it is stated, and I quote, "In the first 15 months after March 4, 1933, the President alone issued 674 executive orders, aggregating approximately 1,400 pages." So much for your 4-page statute. This was a greater volume than that of the preceding 4 years, and nearly 6 times as great as that of the 39 years from 1862 to 1900. That was a staggering output from FDR's New Deal. By comparison, President Obama has issued 49 executive orders in his first 15 months in office. The decision to consolidate the publication of government official action in the Federal Register passed both houses of Congress by voice vote and was implemented in just 9 months. While collecting and publishing the law was a beginning step, its consequences permitted the involvement of the public in the processes of government. The Freedom of Information Act, the Federal Advisory Committee Act, and the Sunshine Act all grew out of this basic proposition that the public has a right to know about the work of its government. That point has enduring relevance in the Web 2.0 technology revolution we are seeing today. Congress would continue its regulation of the administrative state after the Federal Register Act was passed. Due to World War II, it would take 11 years before the next great document, the Administrative Procedure Act, was signed into law by President Truman on June 11, 1946. The centerpiece of the APA was the provision for informal rulemaking, a process that Professor Casey Davis has called one of the great inventions of modern government. He said this because, unlike the legislative process, which it resembled and derived from, rulemaking required notice, public comment, and reason-based decision-making. This system of informal rulemaking was well established on a paper basis by the 1950s. Cases like United States versus Storer Broadcasting defined the word hearing in flexible terms, thereby encouraging agencies to proceed by rule rather than through adjudication. In the ensuing decades, rulemaking became the preferred process for agency decision-making. It offered some insulation from the politics of the executive and legislative branches, while being subjected to limited second-guessing by the judiciary. Of course, the rulemaking process continues to evolve today. Detecting, let alone predicting, trends in this dynamic field is not easy. But it is not hard to conclude that technology will affect rulemaking in profound ways. One way, potentially, is that the rulemaking record will be rethought, which could affect the role of the courts on review. Let me explain. My first assignment as a consultant to the then Administrative Conference was some 35 years ago, if you can believe it. I find it hard to believe it. And the issue was how to define the, quote, record, unquote, in rulemaking. Informal rulemaking, as I said, has been essentially a legislative or non-record process. There is no record, of course, in the legislative system. Unlike formal rulemaking, where the record was established much like as in adjudication. My report led ACUS Recommendation 74-4, which established a record for judicial review of informal rulemaking, which included the notice, the rule, all comments submitted, and the open-ended category of anything else the agency proffered for review. Once this record was established, the courts could move from legislative deference type review to evaluation under the arbitrary and capricious or substantial evidence review standards. In the ensuing decade, rules were remanded with increasing frequency as courts began to look more closely at the records supporting the factual basis for agency rules. Rules became more contested as a result, and the Supreme Court, concerned about the allocation of authority between the executive and judicial branches, ultimately called a halt to heightened review in cases like Vermont Yankee and Chevron. Forgive these in-group references to the non-lawyers, but we can always provide citations if you'd like them. A new regime of rulemaking formation that allows for comments and discussion to be submitted electronically will make agencies more informed and perhaps even more expert. But it will also challenge the idea of a record worked out by the conference in 1974. What does a court do with a, quote, record, unquote, that may include thousands of megabytes of electronic comments and submissions electronically rather than in a fixed set of papers? Do the concepts of hard look review and logical outgrowth, the doctrine of limiting the degree that a proposed rule can depart from a final rule, still work when the record could extend well beyond the confines of the paper comment process? It could be that both agencies and courts will have to rely on the political branch implications of Chevron even more in the future in order to accommodate this expanded record. But while the review and record collection process will be strained in the world of new media, the public will be able to participate in ways never before imagined in 1946. Rather than stylized and often prepackaged written submissions unloaded at the end of the comment period, we can now envision a constant flow of information submitted throughout the comment period, or even before it begins, that permits interaction between participants and regulators alike. In addition, negotiated rulemaking, a conference-sponsored statutory initiative, can be even more valuable today in the world of Rulemaking 2.0, which can dramatically expand the number of negotiators who participate in negotiated rulemaking. Well, the genius of the APA has been its flexibility. This venerable statute has accommodated a broad variety of agency decision processes and now stands ready to absorb vast technological changes. E-rulemaking has its own architecture and record system, the federal document management system, as you know. A committee on the future of federal e-rulemaking, sponsored by the ABA Administrative Law Section, reported in 2008 on the goals and challenges of this new process. ACUS may suggest new directions as well. Surely one thing is clear. The brave new world of technology must be adjusted to at warp speed if we are going to take full advantage of it. So for me, technology and rulemaking, with its crowdsourcing potential, is not just a trend, but a mega trend that will make rulemaking an even more significant tool of democratic government in the future. The conference was created in 1964, as those Roman numerals told you if you got it, to improve the fairness and effectiveness of the rulemaking, adjudication, licensing, and investigative functions of federal agencies. Making the rulemaking process more accessible to public engagement has been a long-time priority of the conference. As this list of recommendations over our history can show you, one of our first recommendations, 68.5, directed federal agencies to engage more extensively in affirmative, self-initiated efforts to ascertain directly from the poor their views concerning rulemaking that may affect them substantially. 4 years later, Department of Transportation